Yeah! Were you the guys, now, is the people in the room, are you the ones who came back on the bus after dinner or the ones who stayed for the party? You stayed all night, good for you. Why bother going to sleep, just come on in. Sleep on the plane. Great, I hear, I wasn't there last night, but I hear that it was great. I heard that dinner was fantastic and that the after party was great. I did want to mention one thing that I had forgotten the other day about something that's coming up that might be of interest, I think, to anybody in digital marketing. Something that we do every year. It seems a little off topic for us, but in fact it's become on topic as we've started publishing about politics and digital marketing in politics. On January 17th in Washington, D.C., we're doing our 4th annual Marketing Politics event. And we're going to have, it's really going to be the first post-mortem on what happened, what went right, what went wrong, what did we get right and wrong when it came especially to digital marketing. That in many ways is a story that has not been told. The story of the polls and where they went wrong is only a part of it, but the ways in which digital marketing was used on both sides is a story from this last campaign that has lessons for everybody, because one of the things that I've found in covering that field in particular in the last few years is that a lot of the things they're doing, especially with nano-targeting, and especially their use of dynamic creative in many ways is way ahead of a lot of other marketers. So even though if you're not going to be in DC on January 14th, we're going to have people like a whole rash of people from the DNC, the RNC, the Republican Governors Association. We have the Chief Digital Officer of the Republican National Committee is going to be one of our keynoters, and Jen O'Malley, who was John Podesta's right-hand woman on strategy for Team Hillary, is going to be one of the keynoters as well. I just say this because if you're not in DC, again, we're live streaming all of this. So tune in or go to the agenda online and check it out. There's some really interesting stuff that goes on there. I'd really urge it on all marketers. And of course, a reminder, we are not only live streaming this, but the videos from the last 2 days are already up on the site. So if you want to go back for reference or pass them on to anyone else, they're there. So today we're going to get a little bit old school. We're going to wrap this up by looking at some tried and true topics like branding and rebranding. We're going to look at going back to some of the basics of digital growth. And then we're also going to talk about sort of that age-old tension that's sort of become recharged in the last year or so, the tension between agency and client. But let's start by talking about both an old and a new brand. Cisco, which in many ways is one of the oldest and the longest lived of digital brands, has been rebranding of late. And Diane Pease, who's the regional audience manager at Cisco, is going to tell us about the thinking behind that and how it's being implemented. Diane is charged with overseeing digital first, real-time, and omni-channel marketing at Cisco. She's been in the field for a number of years working with clients like Lowe's, Sirius, Ulta, and GlaxoSmithKline. Please welcome Diane Pease.
Thank you, Steve. And good morning on this snowy day. I know a few of my co-friends out here were out tubing yesterday. I had so much fun, I missed the bus. But fortunately, my friend Steve gave me a ride back last night. Otherwise, I think I'd still be there, probably still tubing down the hill. So my name is Diane Pease. Been working at Cisco about 3 years. Prior to that, I was on the agency side. So was fortunate enough to work for Acronym and MediaCom. So it was great to connect with some of my old friends here from the agency side. So I'm going to talk to you a little today about how Cisco's rebranded itself. And as Steve mentioned, Cisco's been around for a long time. But a lot of people don't know that Cisco actually began as a love story. Kind of strange. But about 30 years ago, there were two network engineers who lived on opposite sides of the Bay Bridge. And they were madly in love with each other. But the problem was they couldn't communicate, right? So being the smart people that they were, they developed the first multi-protocol router, and that's how Cisco got its start. So Cisco's been based pretty much as a hardware provider for the last, we realized we really needed to be competitive with other companies out there. So instead of being hardware focused, we needed to be more of a solution provider, being someone that could help our clients with technology and also expanding into technologies such as cloud and data center. And of course, this is what our lovely routers look like. So again, moving away from that association of always being a hardware-driven company to being a solutions provider. So I don't know if many of you might have seen this. This was our campaign from last year based on the Internet of Everything Tomorrow Starts Here. And there's this guy who walks around bouncing a tennis ball, and he's basically your hacker that's trying to get into your data. And he's basically, the premise of it was, you won't recognize me because I could be anybody out there, which is technically true. And while this campaign was fairly effective, the problem was we weren't really helping our clients with something they didn't already know. Most of our clients know that, hey, data security is a problem. We need to have some kind of a plan in place to resolve that. So we started really thinking about, we really need to think about how do we really want to communicate to our clients? Is it really more about pushing something out to them? Or is it really listening to our clients, figuring out what they want? So this is where we started really kind of putting our new brand campaign together and looking at some key things. We knew the world's changing, right? There's billions of connected people and things. Digitization is creating massive opportunity. We all know that. All companies are really trying to get that digital focus. The customer experience is more important than ever. And I know there's been several conversations around Starbucks and Amazon because we know those guys have really got the customer experience down. I mean, I'm a big Starbucks addict myself, so I know when I go in, they know what I want, they give me points, and I get free drinks on my birthday. You know, they've got me. So, you know, I'm all set there. But we really wanted to start listening to what our customers wanted. And we actually started talking to our customers, which is kind of a novice thing, right, for a big company. But we actually really started interviewing them, talking to them one-on-one and saying, hey, what do you think about Cisco? What does Cisco mean to you? And we all know that businesses have to transform, right? We know that digital is the way, it is the future, and that our clients were looking for us for that. So we started talking to our stakeholders, like asking them, we knew we needed to change the point of view of Cisco. And we asked our stakeholders, which is a list of some of them here, what is your point of view of Cisco? So they came back to us and saying, you guys really need to be a technology visionary. We're looking for you to help us get to the future. We need to have a message of optimism. We need to be positive. We need to be, you know, out there changing the world. So we took a lot of this information back and started building the creative for our new brand campaign for 2016. So we wanted to be positive, right? We wanted to stand out. We wanted to have something that was a different message from the scary hacker guy that was bouncing the tennis ball. And looking at it through the customer lens. So again, this was a big shift for us because we typically were telling our customers what we thought we wanted, but we really started listening to them to say, what do you want from us? And then in January, some of you might remember the Zika virus was all over the news. The stock market was having problems. There was all sorts of negativity out there in the market. And we really started wondering, should we really be promoting a message of optimism? Is this the right time to do it? So we did something that was really, really radical and something that Cisco's never done. We took our creative to our stakeholders and said, guys, what do you think? Should we go ahead and put something out there that's going to be so radically different, positive, optimistic, customer-centric? Is this the right time to do it with all the negativity that's going on in the world? And our customers said, absolutely, you've got to go ahead and do this. And you can see, based on the percentages from around the world, they basically came back and said, technology is the single most important driver of change. Cisco, you guys need to do it. So we were like, okay, let's go. So again, we were going to position ourselves as a networking leader and technology visionary. Very much a very different focus from, again, the hardware background that we had started 30 years ago. So again, evolving a change from the company that had been around and been noted for being a hardware provider. So we created a brand promise, which was securely connect everything to make anything possible. So this was our brand promise. That was our North Star. This is what we drove everything for when we started creating the new campaign. And this is what it was. There's never been a better time. So we created a manifesto, and I won't go through, read the whole thing to you, but basically it's like we can do anything. Technology is the single most important driver. It's going to allow us to change the world. So we created stories based on these different manifesto points and talked about, you know, stories of innovation, ways that we could help people, how we could use, what are those things? Oh, drones to track rhinos to make sure that poachers weren't chasing them around. So we thought, you know, we're going to appeal to people on a very personal level. It was going to be digital first, obviously, omni-channel. We wanted to make sure that, our experience was seamless, whatever media or device that you were on, and the customers were going to drive this. Oh, there's a couple of caveats, folks. It had to be in 12 countries, which meant that the experience would have to be local language, so we had to have our customer reps in the different countries translate and make everything local language. You have 71 days to get this done, and there's no plan B. So basically, everyone that was in marketing put our badges on the table and said, okay, this is something we've got to do. This is our directive that our CMO's given us, so we're going to get started. But Cisco's always had the position of pushing the brand out to the customer. So we really had to focus changing the mindset internally of how we communicated with our customers. And again, making sure we listened and not giving them the drill, and making sure that we gave them the hole in the wall that they were looking for. So to put it all together, we needed to complete a profile of who our customers were, and then carry it consistently across the channels, making sure it was omni-channel, offline and online, and create that customer experience, putting the customer first. And I love this slide because we always think about B2B and B2C, and I work for a B2B company, but it's really about B2Me. It's the person at the end of that transaction, whether they're on mobile, whether they're on social, whether they're searching, it's a person that you have to think about. So instead of thinking about it as a business to business or business to consumer, it's really an individual that you have to think about. So we began putting the campaign framework together. And what this involved was daily meetings, everybody, all the different countries, I guess you could call it scrum sessions we would go through, making sure that we were on point, because we only had 71 days to get this done, and that's not a lot of time. So we, of course, put our objectives in place, being our technology visionary, our brand promise. We created an audience that we targeted called the Tech Optimists, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We also had the mindset, the technology was the driving force. We focused on certain core technical areas, business, core networking, social responsibility. And then our tone was going to be optimistic, positive, telling stories, human. We wanted to touch people in a way that we had never been able to touch with a router before. We wanted to get people, emotionally involved. So we utilized the data management platform to develop a Tech Optimist audience. And you can see through here there was different categories of criteria for who this person was. Because we knew a Tech Optimist was someone that was interested in technology change, that was going to be innovative, they were going to be creative, they were probably big bloggers and social media influencers. So we created this persona based on the information that we were able to gather. And then how are we going to reach this person? So we knew that we had to look at it from a paid perspective and also from people coming to Cisco.com. We also looked at it from a social and also from a mobile, because we do have a lot of Cisco apps. So we knew our potential reach was about 70 million people global. So we knew, okay, we've got a great audience here to target. So we wanted to target people in this Tech Optimist group kind of based in the day of the life of the person, right? So we know when they get up, they're going to be on their phone, they're going to be checking their mail, probably sending a few messages. I know with me this morning, my kids were texting me to let me know, when are you getting home, Mom? So, being there when they're looking for something, but making sure that, Cisco's there whenever they might happen to be thinking of us. Having their coffee. So they're, reading the Wall Street Journal. We could have an ad there that they could actually be seeing, based on something that they might be interested in related to the campaign that we were doing. Commute in, again, being able to be there on their ride to work. As they get into the office, they're out there doing searches, they're looking for solutions for their problems. Making sure that we're there as far as, when they're looking for something, that Cisco's present. As we go through the day, they go to lunch, and they're going to be having conversations, doing social, again, making sure that we have ads out there on different social channels so that they can see. And as you can see, going back to work, the same thing, being there again, whether they're doing search queries or whatever they happen to do. The drive home, they might be listening to NPR, they're thinking about their day, maybe they're kind of, digesting some things. Hey, I might need to kind of do some research on a particular topic, maybe, related to cloud. And then at the end of the day, we know that these people go to these particular sites, so again, it's ways for us to advertise to them directly. So again, it was really a new kind of brand launch. When we did launches in the past, it was kind of like we got an email, oh, guess what, we got a new brand campaign out there. But this was really different because we wanted to make sure that we based it on customer successes, stories of innovation, corporate responsibility. It was country-led, so right, we let our countries be able to do their creative locally in local language and being able to have some skin in the game with us. It was also mobile and digital first, so we made sure our mobile experience was the same. And omni-channel, the seamless experience from brand to demand. Again, we really capitalized on social a whole lot. That was really a big piece of it, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things we did with our employees. Agile, so being able to switch out creative as needed. You know, we might have a story out there, but say the story wasn't working well, we put something new out there that might perform better. We had our partners involved because almost 80% of Cisco's business actually comes from our partners. So it was really important for them to get involved with this brand campaign. And then we also did a different way of measuring called audience engagement. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. So we did a follow the sun launch. So we started in New Zealand and launched the campaign across the world. It was really cool to be able to see everybody go live during the day. So here's some of the momentum that we got when we first started. So we had the hashtag #NeverBetter. We got a ton of impressions on that. With engagement points, the way we were measuring how successful we were, we did really well with that, and our social impact was really huge. So one of the things we did is we created a social ambassador program within Cisco. So we got our employees really involved with this, which was the first time we ever did it. So we had tweets and things that people could tweet out. We let people write their own content. The day that it went live, we had cake and ice cream, which was really kind of cute. And then just ways people could express themselves. You know, this was a big, big deal. So this was actually in one of our cafes where people could actually write down, what does it mean that this, there's never been a time to, and let people kind of fill it out. So it really got people in the company excited and getting, them to be really our brand ambassadors. And this is an example of what the actual creative looks like. So compared to the scary hacker guy bouncing a ball, this was something that was really, really different. So we talked about the rhinos, being able to track them using drones to make sure that, the poachers weren't getting them, saving people's lives in disasters. So for example, when there's a disaster situation, Cisco goes in, sets up Wi-Spy so people can communicate to their loved ones to let them know that they're okay. And then just some of the other stories that we had. So once we launched this campaign, it was really important for us to really focus on testing. We needed to have testing be a part of our DNA, and that was something we hadn't really done a great job as well. I know we've had a lot of conversations, over the last few days. We talk about AI, we talk about attribution, and we talk about a lot of the different, pain points that we have. And yes, Cisco has the exact same pain points, especially with attribution. That's a huge one for us that we're still trying to crack that nut too. But for testing, we realized we really need to put this in practice and be very cognizant of it as we're going through and measuring and monitoring this campaign. So we looked at, as far as how we were going to, be able to measure things, we created obviously lots of dashboards and things like that, and having optimization meetings on a weekly basis with our, global teams to make sure that we're giving the best experience to our customers. So, we look at the data and say, okay, no, this isn't quite working the way we think it is, so we use the I think, I do mentality here. And then, go in and make those changes and try them out. One of the things that's been interesting at Cisco is, failure is fine. It's okay to make a mistake. The fact that you tried something different is always encouraged. So this is an example of actually a test that we did. And actually, the gentleman that did this had only been at Cisco for 2 days. So it wasn't someone that had been out there for a long time. But sometimes fresh eyes can make a big difference. So we noticed that, our mobile performance was a little bit off on this. And really, all it was basically shifting the creative up a little bit on the page. So on the mobile device, you could actually watch the video. And actually, the conversion rate for mobile went up, 300%. So we always, with Cisco, a lead is what our foundation, because we basically give our leads to our sales team. They go out and close the deal. But, you know, a lead can be measured in a lot of different ways. So we started thinking, we really need to look at customer engagement. It's more important how our customers are engaging with us on the site, and based on the information we were able to have, we created a standard way to measure this across different portfolios and channels. So we came up with about 15 different engagement points based on reach, interaction, and action. So for example, someone who was a repeat visitor to the site would have a higher engagement score. And then we used a cool little scientific way to, create this, and then being able to track it through our different dashboards. And we be able to do this with this campaign just in 1 quarter alone. We had accomplished 86% of what the entire campaign did last year. So we knew we were reaching our customers better, giving them more about what they were looking for. So one of the new things that we're doing, and we actually just started doing this, is creation of a smart landing page. So using Adobe, we're able to go and basically recognize the user when they come back to Cisco and give them a personal landing page and giving them the content that they're looking for based on their previous behaviors. It's a mobile-first responsive design. We just actually launched one of these while I was here this week, and it's been actually going pretty well. Again, keeping that customer experience focused, so when someone comes to Cisco, it's not like, they know who you are, and they're going to give you what you're looking for. So some of the thoughts were around what we kind of learned and kind of what we're kind of focused on going forward. To do something like this, it does take a village. It takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of commitment, and making sure that everybody's on the same page, and making sure that you're constantly communicating and getting everybody excited as well, because that was very important because of the short time frame that we had. Keeping it employee focused, allowing our employees to be a part of this, which I think was something that really got them excited, but I think it's going to be something that we'll be carrying forward, and we continue to do that. And being customer-centric, again, getting away from pushing out to our customers to learning what our customers want. We've actually created a part of Cisco that's basically focused on customer experience, and that was something was kind of a new thing for us. We're really listening to our customers and partners and finding out what do they want from us, what do they want to learn. And then testing, making sure that testing is truly a part of our DNA and something that we cognizantly do every time we're executing a campaign and moving forward. And that is it. Thank you.
Diane, thank you very much. Any questions of Diane? Yeah.
Do you feel like having the time frame of only 71 days allowed you to take out the component of overthinking?
I would totally agree with that. We had a lot of really smart people on this. I would say it was probably like 250 to 300, because again, it was a global campaign. And, people left their egos at the door, too. It wasn't like someone came in and said, okay, I'm going to be running this. But everybody, it also allowed people, I think, to be really creative, because it's like, hey, we've got to get this done. And so, we did, I think, cut out a lot of the things that maybe weren't as, maybe as necessary. And, I'll be honest with you, when it launched, it wasn't 100% perfect, right? Nothing ever is. But I think it really just putting that, mantra in, it's like, you have such a short time frame to do this. It really just allowed us to be able to execute. And we also were given kind of carte blanche, right? You guys do whatever you need to do. If you need these resources, you're going to get them. So I think that was a big fundamental. We had support from all the way up to do it.
What did you learn about communicating across the different silos in such a tight time frame? What are some of the lessons that you learned about how you could actually manage that effectively? Since that's sort of one of the sub-themes of this whole event, and just about every event we do now, is breaking down silos and how you actually affect the communication across the different departments.
I think what was interesting with this, it actually forced us to kind of reorganize. So as part of once we launched this, we realized, well, we need to kind of bring things together. So it made us really rethink about how we execute campaigns. So, for example, now if we want to do a campaign execution, there has to be different teams involved from the get-go, as opposed to like them all being separate and then taking the project around to them. So the way we've restructured has allowed us to be able to do this, and I think it's going to continue to be able to make things faster and more agile as we go forward.
That strikes me as a really interesting point, that we often think about reorganize in order to affect different campaigns, as opposed to do the campaign. The campaign is the goal first, and what you learn from the campaign will tell you something about how you need to reorganize to actually affect it.
Yeah, it was kind of backwards, but I think it worked well for us.
Diane, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let's bring Teresa up. Teresa Durr, who you just heard from, who is the Director of Digital Marketing at Quill.com.
Am I clicking right? There we go. So you are correct. We're going to go back to basics today. We're going to get human. We're going to take it back. We talked a lot about bots and a lot about AI, a lot about what the future holds, all great stuff. But there are some things that probably exist in your campaigns today that you don't even think about that you can influence to drive growth without additional budgets and with using that human element. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm Teresa Dewar. I'm here because I love to yap, but also because I love digital marketing. I've been doing it for a long time, as many of you. I started on the traditional advertising side, pre-9/11, very Mad Men-esque. We had lots of happy hours and cocktail parties with our clients. Our agency was about 140 people. I worked on the Chicago Tribune, Let Us Entertain You. Then 9/11 happened, and all of our clients yanked their budget because business was just so soft. And so I was part of the skeleton crew. Our agency staff was also cut along with that. But I was one of the skeleton crew, which was actually a great thing because it let me to really understand all different parts of the business and really work on the business that was still around. I also got to dabble in Metromix.com, and that was my really first taste of, has anyone heard of Metromix? We're going back, yeah, thank you. So started dabbling in some banner advertisements, display, and the craziest thing happened. The client didn't want to cut budgets on things where they knew a click was actually driven. Billboards, no problem, they would cut those. Print ads, cut those as well. But they didn't want to cut things where they could actually see measurable growth. So I said, hey, this digital thing is kind of cool. I think I'm going to stick around. So what is Quill? For those of you who don't know what Quill is, this is Quill. Think of your office manager. Think of the one that you go to and say, I need more Post-its, my toner's out. Book my travel. What are we going to do for a potluck for the team? This is our customer flow. She has been around with Quill for a long time. She is our brand ambassador more than anybody else could be. She's holding a catalog from 1989. She uses us to buy pretty much everything on her desk over there. So the phone, the Rolodex, the paper, the pens. That is our customer. That is who we try to target in everything that we do across digital. So this is not only a plug for Quill, but it's also a public service announcement to think of your admin this holiday season, find out what they drink, buy something for them. Because they can control the shit flights on the seats on the plane or the good seats, so treat them well. So did everyone wear comfy shoes? Because we're going to take a walk down memory lane. The evolution of digital. Life was so simple in the beginning. Email marketing. Remember when email was first came on the scene? I mean, there was no such thing as spamming. Subject lines, you could do whatever you wanted. It was wonderful. Then paid search came along. That was even better because CPCs were so inexpensive. You could build out, test, do whatever you wanted, and really that was what digital consisted of. Then we started adding things on. LinkedIn came around, Google Analytics, SEO became important, YouTube. We also started adding on things like Twitter and Facebook and MySpace and all that good stuff until we got to where we're at today. But things didn't go away when we added new channels. So whose company stopped doing email because they started doing paid search? No. Who stopped doing paid search when Facebook ads came along? No. Which is actually job security for all of us, right? So as the channels grew and as digital marketing morphed into what it is today, our budgets grew, our teams grew. It's a great thing, but it's very complex. There's a lot to it now, a lot more than it used to be. I do miss the good old days. So, testing. I'm not only using this because I'm from Chicago, but because when you think of professional sports, at least when I do, I think of Michael Jordan. He's fabulous. But I like to apply this to my career. I like to think, I'm a professional in digital, right? We're all professionals. So if we use this quote and we look at the shots being clicks and the games being leads, it gives us validation that failure is okay, just as we heard earlier. It's okay to fail. That's what makes digital what it is. It's great. If we don't fail, we're never going to learn, we're never going to grow. We have to make sure that we are testing in order to pivot, be agile, and like I said, to continue to grow. So I'm here to tell you, keep calm, continue that testing, Don't overthink it. Testing is what helps us to find our customers, to talk to our customers, to evolve and to thrive in a very competitive market. It's very difficult. But if we keep calm and we keep testing these things, even just using our gut, throwing things out there, we're going to get better at it, and we are eventually going to find things that work. We have found things that work. We also found things that don't work. It's a 24-hour operation. That's what I find as well. So testing ideas can come from not just what we're hearing here today, but you get an email on your phone from your favorite retailer. Oh, maybe I can morph this into what I'm doing at my business. Even though we're B2B, it's all very applicable. I'd use that to kind of think through, oh, how can I talk to Flo in this way? And you have to keep those wheels turning, especially at events like this. It's always good, the conversations, the content, to keep those wheels turning. So, where do we grow from here? I'll give you a minute to sing the song in your head. Let's get it out of the way. So if you could turn back time, and you could go back to the start of your paid search campaigns, would you build the campaigns then the way that they exist today? So think about that. If you knew then what you know now, would you have built them the same way? I sure as hell wouldn't. There's a lot that I would have changed. And especially those who have inherited campaigns, and who hasn't inherited their campaigns? We've moved around companies, agency has taken over, new agencies. So it's really important that you make sure that if you were to build something today, what tools would you use to build it today? So for me, top SKU report, right? So we have 1 million products. What are those top products? If I were to forget the campaign, the paid search campaign that exists, and were to rebuild it up from the ground up, what tools would I use? On-site search? What else would you use? What are some other reporting tools you would use to build a campaign from scratch? Customer service reports, maybe? Research? Customer interviews? Those are all the things that I like to think about. So also, how does it tie in with our business objectives? So again, the campaigns that exist today, we didn't even have those business objectives back then. I wasn't around. Was anyone around when their paid search campaign was built? The paid search campaign that lives today? No. So there's a lot that's in there. So now think about your current campaigns. When was the last time that you dug into your campaigns? And I'm not saying getting on a call with your agency and say, oh, we're growing and everything's wonderful. I'm saying rolling up your sleeves, logging into DoubleClick or Kenchu or whatever tool, and like combing through your campaigns. I'm saying at the director level, at the CMO level, at the VP level. If you have not dug into your campaigns, are you just hopeful that your business objectives are covered, that your top SKUs are covered, or do you know for a fact? I think a lot of us here are hopeful, right? Because it is a daunting task. If you haven't seen it, and you haven't reviewed it, and you haven't discussed it with your agency partners and your internal teams or amongst your peers, you don't really know that it's there. You're putting a lot of trust into a lot of different people. And trust is good, but it's also good for you to know that as well, and to have that validation. Any of this Old House fans? Love this Old House. Love Tom Silva. He's always talking about how the foundation of the house, look at that foundation, lots of holes. And in order to build on an old house, you have to fix the foundation. You have to fix the holes, you have to fix the cracks. Otherwise, the structure will not be sound. The same is applicable to digital marketing. If we do not fix the foundation of our campaigns, we're never going to we're going to hit a plateau. We're going to start running in circles. There's efficiencies that can be found just by filling those holes and plugging the gaps in the foundations of your campaign. Like I said, agencies change, people at your company change, leadership changes. There's a lot that's going on. There's things that could be missed. Fundamental things. I think Tony mentioned it on a panel yesterday. You can't boil the ocean. You can't eat an elephant with one bite. I never heard that one before. But the same thing is applicable here. Our campaign is huge. Our paid search campaign is huge. So you can't do everything at once. You have to really calm down, think about all that's in there, and find a starting point, and at least just start tackling it. It's going to take time, but it's worth the effort. So how do you help them help you? So I mean that by saying, how do you help your internal team to help you if you are a leader? How do you help your agency team help you? How do you help each other? There's a lot of different teams that come in to managing paid search. Think about all of the different people you interact with. Even if you have it in-house, you have your internal team, we have an agency partner. We have other partners outside of that. We have Google's team, we have the Bing team, we have the Yahoo team. There's so many different people. And it's your job as a leader to make sure you're bringing all these people together and you're doing the best that you can to share information and make sure they're on track and targeting what they should be. Think about, on the client side or the brand side, I can at least speak to this, how many meetings you are in a day. I am in meetings sometimes, no lie. I have to turn my phone to my husband to say, this is my day today. Back to back to back meetings, which is fine. You're in leadership meetings, e-commerce meetings, customer service meetings. But are you passing that information on to your internal teams and your agency partners? That is the critical information that they need to know to help ingest into your campaigns. So for me, I try when I get back to my desk, even on my phone, just to dictate, using Siri, dictate a voice message so that I make sure I'm bringing key components out to my team. So customer service can bring up something. Yeah, we're hearing across the board from our customers that they're really confused about this product. Okay, good to know that. How can we address that in digital? How can we address that in paid search? It's very important to do. You also have to make sure that you're thinking about all of the gaps that you can fill yourself. If you're rolling up your sleeves, you're not only, I'm not saying that you need to breathe down your agency's neck. I'm not saying that. Don't anyone see me after this and say, stop preaching that. You don't have to breathe down your associates' necks either, but you need to play an active role. You need to hear what's going on and know what's going on in order for you to help them and bridge those gaps by information, but not being an information hoarder. It's the worst thing. So how do you do that? Well, you have to perform digital triage. Massive campaigns, you have to start somewhere. What are your top click keywords? If you don't know the answer to that, you need to dig in and you need to figure out what is the keywords in your campaigns that are driving the most clicks, that has the highest click-through rate, that has the highest conversion rates. If you're already addressing that and you're actively discussing that with your agency partners, let's go to the mid-tier. What are those mid-tier terms that are maybe out there, drive revenue every now and again, but don't drive revenue all the time? Have you clicked through? Have you looked at the landing page? Have you looked at the ad copy, the site links? Have you tested there? If you haven't, there's lots of opportunity there. That is where we have found opportunity and where we have seen growth. No additional budget needed. That is where we have found growth, by just being efficient. Also, another thing with our customers, if you think about the machine where you put a piece of paper on and you scan it and it prints, could be called copy machine, right? HP would say that's a 465 72A printer. That's not what our customers say. Copy machine. Like, if you think about how people call things and what's in your campaign, right there, you could have a layer of opportunity. Think about a box of paper that has 10 reams in it. Box of paper, okay, we'll bid on box of paper. Case of paper, carton of paper. Think about all those variations. Again, looking at those top keywords and sitting with your agency partners, sitting with your internal teams, how do you build off of that? How do you make sure that you're adding those variables? A machine's not always going to do that. That's where the human element comes in, making sure that you're thinking about your customers, sitting on customer ride-alongs, talking to them, figuring out, oh, hey, take me through what you do on a day-to-day. That, sitting down with Flo, hearing what she does and all of the many things, all the hats she wears, how she juggles it all. How can we help her? How can I, in digital, make sure that I'm talking to her? So we walked down memory lane. We patted ourselves on the back for doing a great job and testing. So what are the side effects of really combing through, knowing your campaign, and owning your campaign? Well, in a very short period of time, we were able to drive 13% growth in revenue. Just, again, no additional budgets. That was just in a few months. Now, because if you have a huge campaign, like I said, it's going to take a lot of time. You're really going to need, it could be a year before you comb through everything. But it's important to comb through everything. That is only going to go up, as I've seen with other companies that I've been at. And also, when I was on the agency side, doing that for other clients. And also, we've seen growth in PLA just by taking those examples of copiers, box paper, and incorporating that into our feed so that it shows up when somebody's doing those searches within Google. It also brings happiness in the form of Post-it notes, because I sell office products, but I love them. Who doesn't? And it also brings a thorough understanding and knowledge of your digital campaigns. You can go to your peers and say, hey, did you know that Okidata Printers is still selling on our site? Had no idea. Yeah, Flo's got an Okidata printer. We should still continue to sell those products, fax machines. It also lets you have a better relationship with your agency partners. If you're setting your agency partners up to fail, what good is that? If you're withholding information, if it's us against them, you need to work with them in order to be successful. It also brings superstar status in my eyes, so I'll give that to all of you today. So in case you missed it, and you're just waking up because you know I'm almost done, if you're on the brand side, if you're on the client side, don't withhold information from your agencies. Make sure you know what's going on in your campaigns. Make sure you're helping to fill those gaps. Make sure you're helping your internal teams and your agency partners to be successful and to get into a room. Have a whiteboarding session. Start thinking through all of the different things that exist in your customers and how they shop on your site and all of the different data points. How do you build off of that? If you're on the agency side, it's equally important for you to pull that information out of your clients. And I know, and I've heard from many of you, that is not easy because you do deal with the information hoarders. So how can you be a part of that? Can you go to their office for 2 to 3 days and just kind of sit down with them and walk in their shoes and hear the conversations that are going on, see the posters in the hallways? Sit in a town hall meeting. How can you absorb that information so that you can go into the campaigns and make sure that you're setting up their campaigns for success? We might see less turnover in agencies and management if that part is done. So let me know how it goes. I would love to hear, if you haven't done it, how it goes if you do try to do it. And then we are going to have roundtable sessions later, so we can talk about how to actively get this started if you're not already doing it. That's it. Thank you. Hit me up.
Great, Teresa.
We'll see you later.
Anybody have any questions now, or we could save it? Have any questions now, or we could save it for Teresa's roundtable? Okay, let's do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So I'm Jerry Bavaro, as Steve said, long-standing relationship with lots of big clients. Many of you know Merkle, I think, as previously RKG and Impact, which we acquired. Two big search agencies we acquired about 5 years ago. But Merkle has grown, and many of you know Merkle as a data company. So we compete with Neustar and Axiom and also companies like Epsilon. We were acquired a few months ago by Densuegis Network, and we're now part of the holding company that owns iProspect and 360i. And a lot of the work that I'm doing is I lead our product development group. So we develop proprietary technologies like M1, which takes the data about US consumers and global consumers at the person level. And we've built an audience planning platform on top of that. I lead a team that also leads our partnerships globally. And our partnerships take two different forms. One is the side of Google, Facebook, and our media partners. And the other side is Oracle, Adobe, and Salesforce, because we're a technology consulting firm. So we implement those technologies similar to an Accenture that we compete with. We run it and we drive value for our clients through that. And then the other part is data. So I lead a team that owns our data business, and that's about 300 million people in the US. We have 1,000 attributes of those consumers, and we build segments. We tell clients everything about who those people are, and it drives more of a one-to-one personalized relationship in media and content. So that's my background. I'm excited about this panel because what's near and dear to me, I've only worked at agencies ever. Previously, I was Chief Strategy Officer at Resolution Media and at Omnicom for a long time, and I think the happy marriage between agency and client is all about relationship, but it's a time of transformation. We're experiencing the biggest growth now in digital, but it's also the golden age of complexity, as you heard the past couple of days. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves, and then we'll dig into it.
Good morning. My name is Nick Alaverdi. I am Digital Strategy Manager at 5 Star Senior Living. We're a publicly traded national senior living company, which means nursing homes, assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing, and we're up to about 277 communities across the country. And yeah, thank you.
My name is Daniel Russell. I'm the manager at Go Fish Digital. It's a digital marketing agency based out of DC. Happy to be here. There's no mountains in DC, so snow doesn't really do us much good. We specialize in pretty much all digital marketing with specific emphasis in kind of new media, things like Snapchat, Reddit, kind of newer areas, as well as SEO. And our approach tends to be very transparent. We try to be very clear and open with the clients that we work with and with the partnerships we have. And so it kind of translates into a really, in my opinion, a unique perspective, having worked in marketing in-house before, having done market research for firms in the past. It's something that I think is a unique perspective to have when, even though you're technically a separate entity, there's so much transparency communication that it kind of blends together. And so I'm excited to be part of this panel.
I'm Nick Swan, a Group Account Director at Optimedia, and I'm also a part of the Performance Practice Team, which is a greater extension of paid media underneath Publicis Group.
And good morning, I'm Ron. I'm with Quicken, not Quicken Loans, but Quicken, the 30-year-old personal finance software. It's come up a couple times, and so I wanted to clarify that. I lead the search and all online acquisition for Quicken. I've been with them for about 3 years, and prior to that, I had a search agency in San Diego, so I do have some empathy for the agency folks.
All right, thanks, guys. So here's how I want to break up this conversation. First topic on the questions will be what we're dealing with as trends and challenges in the industry and how that affects the services model on the agency side, but then on the client side as well, right? Times are very different, and I'm sure those of you that are clients, things have changed, and what you lean on your agency for is not the same as what you've leaned on them in the past for. Two is how you create amazing relationships, which is the core of what this panel is all about. And three is the changing face of integration and specialization. So if you haven't seen the many articles about agency of the future out there, there is a big debate going on about the old Mad Men era of the creative agency versus the media agency. That is now coming together. The creative folks, the content marketing folks need to be very close to the media business. So there's an argument about specialization versus full-blown integration, right? Less agencies, more consolidation, but do you give something up when you don't have that specialization? Because many of us grew up in the search world as, geeks of search, and we don't want that to be diluted, and sometimes that happens. So the first question here, I want Dan to kick this off. With complexity in the market and things like search everywhere, content marketing, machine learning was a big topic, big data, mobile, right, tech stack for enablement. What, in your opinion, in the past 5 years, has been the biggest movement in the industry, change in the industry, trend that has changed the way that you work with clients, the whole dynamic? Something really big where you had to rethink the way that you provide service to clients.
Yeah, I think Google and other search providers are relatively predictable in some ways. We can almost always count on them to want to make more money. Like the introduction of the 4-pack in the paid ads, we can kind of count on more things like that. But that's kind of easy to plan for. It's kind of easy to look forward and say, okay, how could Google or Yahoo potentially make more money in the future? This is a change we might see. What has made things more difficult from a planning and from an agency perspective is the introduction of a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning, things like that. So now Google has RankBrain, which I'm sure you've heard of or at least are familiar with. And that's definitely a start into kind of using artificial intelligence to impact results and impact the Google search algorithm. But it's getting not worse. It's getting less predictable a whole lot faster. With deep learning, with things like Google's DeepMind, Google is now setting up so that their algorithm will be tweaked and changed by a machine without any human interaction. So it used to be that Google would use machines and things like that to influence human decision making. So they would, plug in something into an intense algorithm, it would spit something out, and they would say, okay, you now need to start favoring links more than you did in the past, or you now need to start favoring, brand mentions more. And then it would be a human that would actually implement that. Now, more than ever, you've got machine learning and artificial intelligences that are tweaking the algorithm, sometimes potentially doing thousands of tweaks a second across different parts of the world, and then making adjustments to the algorithm based off that. So I don't know if you've been doing searches recently and you've just seen some really incredibly kind of wonky results. Part of that is because this artificial intelligence is making these tweaks. There's not necessarily a human controlling it, and Google's goal in some of this is to try to get at the core intent, so that if you type in "I'm hungry," it doesn't show you websites with keywords that say "I'm hungry" on them. It'll show you, places to eat dinner around you. And in doing that and letting the machines kind of run the show a little bit, it's made things incredibly unpredictable from our standpoint, so that it used to be that we could sit down with a client and plan out the year ahead, set goals for 2017, for example, and then we could stick to that core strategy for much of the year, maybe make some small adjustments here and there. Now, it's changing so incredibly rapidly that we have to do regular adjustments of that strategy. We have to do regular adjustments of what content we're building, what we're recommending to them. It's made it so that a lot more communication is necessary and a lot more adjustment is necessary.
So what about the rest of you guys, the single kind of biggest challenge based on something that's rolled out in the past few years to, on client side, thinking about the kind of current state, and then on agency side, how you approach the client relationship and provide value. So I think of like customer match, right? But it wasn't, everyone waited for Google for 3 years to introduce their parity to Facebook, right, with custom audiences. And that has changed search to audience-based now to a certain degree. Right?
Yeah,
So what about the rest of you?
I'll jump in. I think data is you touched on that. That's the biggest single change that I've noticed. And our agency did something great when we first contracted with them, but they went data first. With us, they got our first party data. They started suppressing audiences, people that bought Quicken 2017 will no longer see an ad. They built custom Tableau dashboards. They did audience modeling. And then, to your point, set us up to be able to take advantage of those betas.
Yeah. And what about, so Nick, Performix data?
Yeah, I think to go off of that side, very successful accounts have a strong client integration, and that's sharing of data. So, from Teresa's point earlier, you have to be comfortable with sharing that information and being willing to give up things like your customer match information. It's only going to benefit your business, and it's only going to make that relationship stronger. So, from on the agency side, we can, be more integrated with you and with your brand, and thought of as more of a partnership and not just an agency.
So I have a question for all of you. How many of you feel like you have a data strategy for the clients out there where you're fully leveraging your first party data, CRM data, but you're connecting that with other data, you're using social data, you're using search query behavior data to really understand who audiences are? Is that something for those of you that are brands that you feel you have down? Go ahead. Yes? Oh, you're not a brand, you're an agency, but you represent brands. Yeah. So, good.
Same, I'm on the agency side.
Agents, we got a lot of agencies here. But the clients are, well, from Quill, you're using CRM data, right?
Yeah, we're doing our best to tie it all together and pass it to the agencies and make sure that we're appending data to it to understand our customers and not only act on it internally, but pass it on to our agencies.
Right. So that gets me to my next question. We'll move into the secret of the long and healthy client relationship. So here's a quote from Linda Boff. So Linda was a client when I was in Omnicom at Resolution, and OMD still works on GE as media agency, but BBDO has been their agency for 96 years, GE, 96 years. And she said, the relationship is 96 years young. Communication is key. It's the secret to any great relationship. BBDO and GE have a super open, very communicative relationship. And then John Osborne, who's president of New York, BBDO, said, we're not mired down in process or formality, and the relationship works because GE allows the agency to come to the table with ideas, and GE gives BBDO the freedom to fail at times, right? So in the world of data, right, and trust now with the ANA report on transparency and programmatic, and agencies just in general being looked at as, can they really understand data and can they have a relationship with me and talk about that? I'll throw this out to you, Nitzad.
Yeah.
What's a tangible example of how the relationship works well? Because you had mentioned to me that you have an agency for 3 years.
2. Yeah.
For 2 years.
Results Digital, yep.
Yeah, so what works, and when you're getting pushed on by the client to translate data into insights and to put that at the center, what works with them?
So yeah, we've been with 5 Star's been with Results Digital for about 2 years, and before that, we actually hadn't really done any sort of. I mean, we tried out some pay-per-click campaigns in the past, but nothing that would. We didn't try to do it to a larger portion of the portfolio. It was more like the problem children, so to speak. So, you know, our biggest driver is occupancy. So when we did a complete site overhaul and sort of redefined our strategy a couple of years ago, it was completely new territory for 5 Star, more or less. And so there were some bumps in the road. But you know, I was struggling to think of something like a learning point that I could bring here, just because, frankly, Results Digital has been really great. I'm very happy with them. I like everybody that works there, and they're really delivering for us. But I started.
Do you evaluate them based on performance, or do you say they're good because it's the way in which they manage the relationship, the communication? Or
It's both.
Everything.
It's both.
Okay.
They really have the whole package.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about so there was this one, like when we had first started doing these campaigns. You know, we have individual communities, 275 of them, and each one has their own marketing budget. So we had set budgets for each campaign. And you know, when you're looking at the invoice, there's just the bottom line. Yeah. So I think it was a few months in, we realized that Results Digital had been taking the unused funds from like this campaign and applying it to another. And when we found out, we were like, okay, we got to pump the brakes. That's really not how this works. We can't operate that way. A move-in is not a move-in is not a move-in. It really depends on where the need is. So we had to sort of take a step back and reevaluate how we were doing things. And you know, when it's something new to the company, and there really isn't any history of it or any success with it in the past, you're really trying to make sure that everything's going okay and you can justify it to senior management. So
Risk aversion.
exactly. So, so and, you know, that's a month's ad spend that wasn't allocated properly, we'll just say. And so it could have been a situation where, you know, we could have come down like, you know, you should have known better, like you can't do this, blah, 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 blah. And on the other side, you know, they could have sort of tried to deflect blame or anything like that. Yeah. But they really owned it, and at the same time, I'm a big believer in if there is a lack of communication, it goes both ways. So from our side, I didn't feel right just putting it on them as well, yeah, just because it was something new to us as well. But they handled it really well, and like I said, they didn't try to deflect blame, which is something that I think is really, really important to me. If you make a mistake, own up to it. There's nothing worse than somebody, like as soon as something comes up and, you know, the agency is trying to say, oh, well, you know, we tried to do this, but you didn't want it. Please, don't even start. Like, I think much more of a person that will just come out and say, you know, I apologize. Obviously, there was an issue here. But but how can we move forward?
Sure.
And so in the few instances where we have had issues with Results Digital and the campaigns or any of the SEO or SEM we've been doing, they're always really upfront. And I get along really well with them. And I was talking to them last night as well. And they have really great hiring practices, because I was saying, how do you have so many people at Results Digital that I just get along so well with, you know?
Yeah.
Nobody rubs me the wrong way. And they said they go through a rigorous training process. So
Yeah.
everybody who sends in a resume goes through basically everybody in the office before they actually get signed on.
So Nick, we talked on the phone. So this idea of risk aversion, so what happens is, for those of you who work with big agencies, and I've been on the big agency side a long time, it's very common for the pitch team to come in and wow you, and have 2 or 3 execs tell an amazing story, and then you get to the client team, and the client team is not wowing you, right? You get the bait and switch, the agency bait and switch. So Nick, we talked about like risk aversion. I know you're in a holding company and in Performix, working with other agencies, and a lot of times it's hard to have the story of value that you tell to a client in the beginning honeymoon stage, right? Last, because we have a 25 or 30% turnover in the agency world of staff. Training processes are an afterthought often. And on top of that, the client is risk averse. So you have to battle it out, and you have to have a relationship with the client where, like a marriage, it's thick and thin. And to Nick's point, you know, you have to own up to certain things. So talk about your experience of risk aversion and how to have that dynamic with a client that works.
Yeah, you know, I think it's stepping stones almost. You know, you're going through a pitch and you have your A team there, and if you deliver your C team afterward, you know, not even your B team, but your C team, you know, you go down quite a bit right off the bat. So coming into you know, new partnership, I think it's really important to focus in on, you know, what are the goals of the business, and treat it as if the agency is actually a part of the client or the brand. And when you have that mentality going in and you're trying to come up with ways to improve the business or ways to improve testing, you're really thinking, you know, what's going to work for me as the brand, rather than me as the agency to grow the business. And I think that's been really effective from my end. You know, I've been on the same account for roughly 6 years, and it's been a part of, you know, our agency for 12 years, and I think that although it has been the same client and same brand, it's changed 3 or 4 or 5 times just since I've been there. And so that stays consistent, not just through the honeymoon stage, but continuously each year as the business changes, as the brand changes, and as the agency changes.
Yeah. So Ron, on the brand side, what do you think is the one thing that's a red flag that your team would look at as a question about the agency's ability to deliver? Like, is there something you look at where you go, we have to review this agency and maybe we need to cut ties?
It's 100% performance.
For you guys, it's performance, right?
As long as they're performing, we give them a ton of, we give our agency a ton of leeway.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to say, you know, the responsiveness we get from our current agency may not be the best, the creative may not be the best, but they continue to hit numbers, and so.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think to what Teresa was saying, I've been in the back of AdWords, and I'm sitting on 5 or 6, you know, nuggets that I want to send over, but it's all in due time with them, and so.
Yeah.
So really, it's just all about performance.
Okay. Yep. And Dan, on the agency side, are you getting pressure on performance, or is it changing now to be about integration and translation of data into insights?
Yeah, I think a couple of things there. One, we were talking about the executive team coming in and wowing.
Yeah.
So I'm on the client delivery side, and so part of it, I think, is it's part of my responsibility is to hold the executive team accountable for what they go and talk to clients about, because I'm the one that eventually has the feet held to the fire, right? And so I think both from an agency perspective and from a client perspective, I think that sense of accountability and realistic goals and guidelines are important. But then also, what Ron was talking about, our most successful client engagements are where we don't need all the leeway under the sun, right? But where there's this mutual trust that there is a slight chance that we might know something that the client doesn't, and then we also have to return that trust that they might know something we don't. And in those cases where we're given that leeway, I think almost all forms of measurement are typically met. Usually the performance is good. The numbers we're able to hit as needed. But then also other areas influencing the business in other areas, things like plugging in data and figuring things out from that perspective, they start to fall into place a little more nicely when there is that kind of cross-channel trust.
Yeah. All right. Is that a time check? How much time do we have, by the way? Good. 15 minutes or so? All right. All right. I want to stay on this because I think for those companies that are brands, not agencies, sitting here in the room, there's often what I've seen is like the house of cards syndrome of the reason why performance is great is because there's somebody on that team that drives the optimization of a campaign. So if this is search and it's year over year or even month over month, you got to hit the numbers, it's CPA or return on ad spend. There's somebody who's the anchor of that team that drives that, and the client latches on to that person. And they're like, man, if Jim wasn't there, our results would suck. What do you do as an agency? We have three guys here on the agency side. What do you do to ensure that the knowledge and that key to performance is democratized? It's not all within one person who then gets spread thin and is on every account, right? How does it work? Is training really a part of what you do? Or is it that you hire people who are really good and have the experience and you plug them in? What's that balance?
One of the things, what Nick was talking about, how he likes all of them a lot, sometimes, you'll really latch on to a personality, sometimes not even just because they're amazing performers, just because you like them too.
Yeah.
I've seen that as well. And it's an interesting battle to fight because that's perfectly natural, normal, happens every day in every, human interaction. But I think making sure that it's, I've noticed a lot of partnerships, they'll have 2 point people and they're the only ones that communicate between like the agency and the client or whoever it is.
A back-end team that's
exactly.
optimizing.
Right. And one of the things we've tried to do to overcome that is everybody is involved on our status calls, everybody is involved on our kickoffs, when we do in-person meetings, everybody is involved. So that way the client's aware of every face, of whose responsibility is whose, and hopefully, if we have put together the right team, then that overcomes any obstacle that might face of just latching onto one person.
And Nick, in performance, this hits on also, is the great employee that's driving performance for a client, the numbers are met, right? The innovation is there. Is that person cross-training? Is that person encouraged to learn about social? If they're optimizing, if they're the paid search lead, how are you seeing that play out now?
Yeah, I think we're spending more time thinking about audience-specific marketing and audience-specific level of everything, and it's very much so cross-channel, cross-division training that's happening. I think just from a structure-wise, we started to see that. You can't have the perspective of just being a great search agency. That is great in some instances, but you really need to be great in everything that you do. Whether you're just doing search or you're just doing display or social, you need to be able to handle all of it. And I think that makes you successful in the long run.
Okay. All right, the final topic here. On the changing face of agency point services and solutions versus integration. So Last week, there was a WPP Global Investors Day, and Martin Sorrell, and the reason why I bring up WPP is they're the largest holding company. They're the most diverse holding company, and they're arguably the most forward-thinking, although now being part of Dentsu Aegis and battling it out with them, I have to say, I don't know if I agree with that fully. But they're WPP, right? So they're really big and very powerful. They said that horizontality is the key to winning with clients. One, that the more services and more integrated a specific team, like example Team Ford, is with their client and involved in more higher level strategic work, there is less risk of an agency losing the particular piece of business. An analogy would be the paid TV providers, right? So if you're triple play with your cable company, phone, internet, TV, stickiness is there, right? You're going to stay for a longer amount of time. Two is changing this is a really good one. They said changing the agency mindset to focus on cooperation across agencies and groups, even if it's a collection of independent agencies, example, 1 or 2 that you have to work with, not 10 or 12 inside of a holding company. It requires a cultural mindset change. It actually requires a considerable length of time to get right and is very hard. And I've seen this because I work on integrations of big agencies every day. But it's not a big agency thing. It's rare to have one agency doing things, right? There's a CRM agency, there's email, direct mail, there's creative. So question here, Nick, the perspective that you have on integration, what really works with integration? Or are you seeing that clients are actually swinging towards specialization? Because things are more complex. They don't want the big diluted holding company deal. They want the search agency to continue being nerds, being deep in it, and the roll-up strategy is not something that they are about, right? What do you see in that?
Yeah, I think it's split a little bit now. People that are going into review or possibly considering doing a consolidation, they're really looking at, is moving everything to one agency the right step for me? And I think it comes down to 2 pieces. One is the internal challenges that they face. Will this even work for us as a brand? And 2, is it really going to make our business that much better?
Yeah. What about audience though? So the theme throughout the past couple of days was, sure, machine learning, big data, changing face of search. However, what is search anymore? Because if you put audience at the center and you understand who the person is, the moment after they search, right, they're jumping into Facebook or they're on Snapchat or they're in the real world and they're walking into a store. So when you put the audience at the center, it breaks down the channel focus of a client. So when the client comes to the table and says, we want to get out of planning search, social, display, content and creative. Talk about, so Nick Saad, talk about like how you're dealing with that, because you're mostly a search agency, but then you have to work with others because, search and social, search and content together. How do you break that silo down?
Yeah, and again, it's an interesting we're at an interesting point at 5-star because I've been working with them for 5 years, and when I came on 5 years ago, there was one person handling 190 websites. So from there, we've made leaps and bounds, but I found that, to your point, I do feel more comfortable with the nerds being in the data and doing and specializing in that. I like my design people to do my design. I like my nerds to do my nerdy stuff. And I found that I'm willing to give a vendor a chance if they're trying out something new. I'm also extremely sensitive to being sold to. So I really don't like things being pushed on me. And I think one of the great things about Results Digital is that they're also aware of the landscape sort of at the company that because it's something newer that we're doing,
Yeah.
I have to justify it to my boss and senior management, but then I also have to justify it to the individuals of the communities. So you're dealing with people who have been nurses for 25 years, and they really don't know, and it's not their job to know about, SEM, SEO, and that sort of thing. But I think knowing the landscape, like I said, of the client, sort of the political climate, even if, it will help in that you're not going to try to push something too soon. And I've just found that I much prefer to have specific vendors doing specific.
So do you guys, with audience, there's so many different tools that you can use to understand at the upstream stage of who the audience is. So this, in the traditional communications planning world, it's the audience, it's the brief. Well, the audience is a persona. It's Jill, and she's a mom of 3, and she shops at the store twice a week, and that's very persona based. But what are you all doing to put audience at the center of, on the agency side, the services you provide to clients, and what tools are like anchor tools or data that you use? And then on the client side, I know Ron, you said like your agency works because they translate data. Is it audience data? Do you feel like it's down at the grain? Is CRM, like starting with the best data possible, which is ask your client about the customers they have? Is all of that going on among your companies?
Yeah.
Anyone jump in?
I'll kick off with this one. There's a newer client that we've had come on, and it's across all media, search, social, digital, et cetera. And we've really taken a audience-first approach. And so on the search side, it's really about structuring things, campaigns from an audience level versus the traditional product level. And it's a new way or a newer way of thinking for the brand and for the agency as well. But it gives us a little bit different insight to how different channels are performing and if we're meeting the correct audience or not. And so it's a kind of new capability of reporting and thinking, and I think it's very effective, at least for this client, and it's definitely something that is going to be explored, for other brands.
No, jump in. Yeah, definitely CRM data is what's working best for us, and we're getting down to the SKU level. We have 6 SKUs. We've never been able to target based on what SKU people buy, and so we're making a lot of great strides just in uncovering what we have with our own data.
Okay. And identity. So the past couple of days, like the attribution panel talked about journey, but you lose the person when they go into Facebook. You lose that person within other walled gardens. So to tie it all back to the journey that this segment actually took towards the last click, it's very hard to do. So I guess for you, Dan, as an agency, when the client asks about understanding the customer journey or the journey between search and other channels, what's the answer? Do you work with, do you have an answer to that? Or are you working with other agencies? Is it a LiveRamp or Axiom or a Merkle type of company that's the stitching? That's the master ID?
It definitely depends on the client. We work with a larger, older company that's in the finance industry. And as you can imagine, numbers are very important to an older company in the finance industry, to the point where numbers become the goal almost. And I don't mean like reaching numbers, I mean just seeing numbers. That's almost what they want. That's what they thrive on. They're the type of organization that will, they'll ask for a report, and then they'll pass that to their higher ups, and then it just keeps on circling back till it gets back to that person. And not a lot of decisions have been made on it. And so when it comes to identifying key data points about the customer journey and items like that, something that we've had to work on, especially when you're working with small companies versus large companies like this one I'm talking about, the client journey is a lot easier to identify on smaller companies that don't have a ton of SKUs, not always, but often it is. In other areas, sometimes the focus changes for clients where it's no longer just about the client journey. The customer journey. It's no longer just about finding the attribution. It becomes all about what are the numbers. We want to see the numbers. We want to crunch them ourselves. And so it's typically in our best interest to help guide where that numerical focus should be. If we can establish that relatively early on, and that often requires, we were talking about sharing data, that often requires sharing quite a lot of data back and forth. But if we can take a look at that and start establishing that map, that customer roadmap that they follow early on, then it becomes much easier down the road once we start getting these numbers in to identify which numbers we should actually care about and make decisions on, and then which ones are actually translating into insights about the journey. Yep. And so laying that framework at the beginning, because otherwise it would be incredibly complicated, and we probably would have to hire some Washington think tank data analysis firm to go through it all. But instead, by establishing that roadmap at the beginning, it becomes easier to plug in as we go along.
Okay. Any others? Identity and mapping the journey, attribution providers.
I think just to add to that, for the longest time, we've always thought of search as, as the traditional funnel. And nowadays, I think a better approach is to really take this of more of a full loop. Once your customer buys, that's not the end of their journey. At some point, you want them to purchase again and come back and repeat that funnel. And so that can be expanded across all media, not just search, but all digital. And I think taking that perspective, whether it's an attribution or tracking, it ends up being really effective.
We're getting into mixed panel, which from the marketing, from the click all the way through first use of our product, and so and obviously use in the product, and we're just kicking that off. So excited to get going on that.
Nice. All right, I think I have a couple of minutes. I want to go back to the what makes for the happy marriage, the relationship part. So just quickly, each of you, in 2 years from now, if we come to this show, this event, what do you think will be the hot topic that if you talk to a brand here, will be make or break for them? What is the one thing 2 years from now that you think is they're either going to say, my agency does this really well, or knows this stuff, or they don't, and it's something that is challenging their satisfaction with the agency. So
I'll kick it off.
2 years, pretty long time in
Yeah.
our world. It's like dog years in the digital.
It's hard for me to say, but keeping up with Google and their changes, as much as they can. I mean, like I said, 2 years ago we did a major site overhaul, completely redid our strategy. Before that, it was the situation where if you did a branded search for one of our communities, we wouldn't be, we'd be halfway down the first page. And everybody above us would be lead aggregators. Yeah. So we finally, did the overhaul, keyword strategy, everything. And we're finally ranking well, if you search for us by name, we're the top result. And then they implemented the 3-pack. And all of that work, not nullified, but in addition, so with the paid ads and then the 3-pack, even being the top result, you're halfway down the page. Right. So and again, explaining that to both my superiors and people at the communities, it gets tough, and you can only say, well, Google does what they do, and we just have to abide by it so many times before people are like, well, give me something, yep. And they don't, obviously, like I said before, they don't understand the landscape and what it's like, so you have to try to cushion the blows, or I'm not sure.
So I'll take that one as in 2 years from now, we don't need less nerds on the SEO side keeping up with the complexities. We're going to need more. And if a client is diluting that with their agency and thinking that SEO, that's just something off to the side, we'll just tuck that off in the corner. We're focused on the paid side.
Yeah.
They're gonna lose. Yep. Right. Or miss opportunity. Okay. Quickly. What do you think?
Yeah. So going back to what I was mentioning before, and changes to like advertising. So when Google introduced the 4-pack recently, clicks on Google websites went up 42%, which is just crazy. And then their Q3 earnings were like 22 billion something, and almost 20 billion of that was from ad revenue, and that was a 20% increase over the goals they had set. So obviously a lot of people are clicking up on those ads now, and that's totally changed the customer journey. It's changed how you interact with SEO and PPC. But luckily, that is one of it. That change came a little bit out of the blue, but it's one of those changes that, again, I feel is slightly more predictable just because it's translating directly to more money. But the machine learning aspect, I think, in 2 years will still be incredibly important because I think it'll start controlling things more and more and more. You know, eventually it'll be Terminator-style stuff. But it's going to control things more and more. And one of the advantages that we now have today, actually, is Google has started opening up its AI. So you can actually use the DeepMind and integrate it with APIs. And we've actually started doing tests with it. Because if we can understand how the AI works, then hopefully that makes it so that we can, one, adjust to changes a lot more quickly because we know where those stem from. But then that also helps because it means potentially we can predict a little bit better about what changes are coming down the pipeline. So I think it's still the AI.
So we have another vote for nerds. Nerds going deep. I know we got to wrap quickly, so what do you guys think?
I'll go very quick. I think it's globalization of brand and agency relationships. I think over the past 2 or 3 years, we've really seen a stronger desire to be more global and be better at global. And so, I guess it's more of a personal goal, but 2 years from now, I want to see agencies and brands have a much stronger global partnership.
Okay.
And I'll conclude with mobile. And mobile feels very now, but in 2 years, imagine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Jerry, panel, thanks very much for wrapping it up for us. We're going to move directly into roundtables, and this will be one of them, and Jerry's going to go in